Welcome to Wednesday, the 12th day of June, 2024. Your day with a podcast being brought to you by Wyoming State Parks. With summer arriving, Wyoming State Parks and historic sites are gearing up with a season of fun and educational summer events. Visit these parks' respective Facebook pages for more information on these upcoming events. Well, it'll be pretty quiet across the region today. We saw a lot of areas in the central and northern Rockies see a dry, sunny, warm day, while we still had a little bit of thunderstorm activity across portions of Colorado and the central and southern high plains. But dry air and high pressure is going to be in control. So it's going to be a warm, sunny day. Any thunderstorms that pop will be very isolated as pockets of dry continue. And we are going to highlight here in a moment the very dry conditions that have developed this spring across portions of southeastern Wyoming, the panhandle of Nebraska. There are pockets where precipitation this spring was good, great even, and pockets where it's been awful. It's been kind of feast or famine, depending on where you live. We're going to have a little bit of thunder work its way back into a few small areas on Thursday. Then the best chance, if you're looking for rain, will be Friday. An upper level trough is going to come up out of the southwestern United States to stabilize the atmosphere, and Friday and Saturday showers and thunderstorms return to the area. Now, the best convergence of moisture will be east of the divide. West of the divide, the activity is going to be spotty. And once we get into Saturday and Sunday, the system moves out fairly quickly and drier air comes back on in. So the thunderstorm coverage this weekend is going to be spotty. Cooler weather early next week as the trough comes through the Pacific Northwest and southern Canada. And what this is doing, there's going to be a rearrangement of things over the next 7 to 10 days. We're going to see high pressure shift to the eastern side of the country and some cooler weather come into the western side of the country. Then things start to reverse as everything sort of retrogrades by late next week. We kind of showed you that yesterday. We'll show you that again today as that high pressure builds back into the region after a cool down to start the week. Then we heat up again. Couple of shots still from earlier this week of those thunderstorms, along with that front that came through on Monday. And also, it's that time of year, a lot of wildlife, a lot of young wildlife from the Bighorn Mountains in northern Wyoming, some baby bighorns. Can you spot them in this photo? I can't. I don't know. I think they might be there, but a beautiful shot nonetheless. As we take a look at the satellite imagery, a very, very quiet looking satellite photo. There's not much to look at across the west. Now let's talk a little bit about the dryness. It's a little deceiving if you were to look at the drought monitor. The drought monitor definitely shows this area of abnormally dry conditions across eastern areas of Wyoming, a few small pockets in western Nebraska, then of course the more significant drought conditions in southern Kansas and southeast Colorado and southwest Colorado. We are now going into a moderate drought situation, as we've been talking about, in far southeastern Wyoming. But what this doesn't take into account is this is a long-term situation. Soil moisture in 2023 was fabulous, as we know, and a lot of decent moisture fell in some areas in the first couple of months of 2024. So we're carrying over a lot of soil moisture from the previous year. So while it may seem very droughty in some locations, and it is, the long-term drought monitor isn't really showing anything severe yet, but these little pockets of moderate showing up. And when you look at the last 30 days, which should be wet, May is one of the wettest months of the year in the region, you can see we have this area of dryness right here, which is showing up. Some of this green that you see right here is actually due to that big thunderstorm pattern that we had Saturday and Sunday in some areas. But you can see there's a large part of northeastern Colorado, central Nebraska, southern Montana, north central Wyoming, where it's a surplus of precipitation over the last 30 days. Where you see brown, that's a negative, and you can see the numbers there represent in inches how much the deficit is. If you go back 60 days, a little bit further, you can see there's that persistent area right there. It just continues. This area kind of picked on while we've seen Montana, northern areas of Wyoming, the Dakotas, northeast Colorado. So we'll see this. You'll see this when you get into a dry or droughty situation. You get islands. You'll get the islands of dry and the islands of wet. And it gets harder and harder to get wet when you're in these dry areas when you lose soil moisture, because that soil moisture evaporates back into the air and helps those thunderstorms get a little more muster to them. If you're in a really dry area, thunderstorms a lot of times just can't maintain themselves or grow to where they can produce moisture. And we have seen that, especially here in the last several opportunities for thunderstorms. They just haven't been able to get widespread. Taking a look at the volunteer rain gauge, the CoCoRaHS volunteer group, if we go back since May 1st and we look at precipitation amounts. Now, generally speaking, most areas, if you're going to be close to average, you're going to be right around 3 or more inches of precipitation. And you can see a few of those, but for reference, here's Casper, Glen Rock, Douglas here, here's Wheatland. Anywhere where you see less than 2, very, very, very dry conditions, but there are pockets where precipitation is better in some areas. It's the further south you go where things look a little bit more dire. So since May 1st, it's just been very, very skimpy. Now, this area has done better in the southern panhandle, but around the Scotts Bluff, Garion area, up into the Torrington, up into the Wheatland area, and then down around the Cheyenne area, over into Laramie. Laramie's done a little bit better. All of these areas, very, very dry. And the prospects for turning this ship around just gets harder and harder the more soil moisture you lose. There's always outliers, like right here, and that's basically due to just 1 or 2 thunderstorms, and that's what June can do, and July as well. 1 or 2 thunderstorms can turn you around in your spot, but not on a large-scale basis. Thunderstorms are very local, as we can see in this map. So thunderstorms can really save you, but if they miss you, you have problems. And so this is a concern going forward. As we go and take a look at where we are today, here's the small upper level low that is over the areas west of Baja there. That's going to rotate up and around this high. This is what's going to arrive for Friday. In the meantime, we're under this high pressure and dry westerly flow. So this is the precipitation forecast today. You got to struggle to find something. These little patches of gray might be where you'll get an isolated cell popping up at the most. And this is the thunderstorm coverage and then where the severe weather is going to be today, closer to that low up there. And as we go into tomorrow, there's a little bit of return moisture wicking back to the west. So there may be, in some areas tomorrow, a little bit of a better chance for thunderstorms. But we're talking about mainly just isolated to widely scattered activity along this I-25 corridor area, then out into the plains. But there'll be a few. And that's where your thunderstorm risk is going to be tomorrow. On Friday, here comes that upper level low, the high shifts. There's not a lot with this low, but it's enough to destabilize the atmosphere. And there should be a cluster of thunderstorms and showers developing Friday afternoon and evening, and maybe going into Friday night. So there's going to be an opportunity in those dry areas that we just highlighted, but whether or not they're going to be able to come together and rain on you, we'll see. So you can see there's a pretty active area there, kind of centered more into northeast Colorado and southwest Nebraska, but there's going to nonetheless be an active pattern on Friday. So Friday's a day where thunderstorm coverage picks up and the risk of severe starts to get a little bit closer to this region, so we'll have to keep an eye on Friday. Then for Saturday, there's an eastward shift where that upper level low is. It's pretty dry west of the divide, just not much going on. So if you're on the western slope, Continental Divide areas, the thunderstorm risk, once you get past Friday, is pretty low. Heat builds in, going to be very warm. These are the temperature anomalies added together from today through Sunday. So between today through Sunday, it's going to be pretty warm. And then by early next week, we talked about a shift. So early next week, there's going to be a trough coming into the Northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest, shifting the high here. So we're going to see some cooler air come in as we get into Monday, Tuesday, maybe into early Wednesday. The real heat will go into the Midwest, the Corn Belt, and the Great Lakes. And there you can see it. By late next week, what's going to likely happen is the high starts to move back to the west, right here. So what'll happen is we'll have a little bit of back and forth with temperature. Very warm through the weekend, a little cooler early next week. The heat returns, and here it is. This is by next Friday. So you can see this arch. We talked about the clockwise circulation around the high. This arch of heat is going to build in the central and southern Rockies, central and southern high plains. This is going to be the start of a very warm period for a lot of the lower 48 states late next week, and as we go into the last parts of June into early July, something we'll keep an eye on. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.